Have you ever wondered why, as you get older, it feels like people start avoiding you or treating you differently? What is it that makes people secretly resent you as you grow older? Well, today, we're diving into the uncomfortable truth that no one really talks about. We're going to uncover 5 surprising reasons why people secretly hate you when you grow old. From the unspoken fears people have about aging to the uncomfortable truths about how society treats older generations, this video will reveal what no one wants to say, but needs to be heard. So stay with me till the end, because I promise you'll walk away with a powerful message about embracing aging with pride and confidence. Let's get into it. Section 1. You're no longer a useful resource. In today's society, productivity is king. We live in a world that places immense value on what we can contribute, whether it's at work, at home, or in our communities. The hustle culture rewards those who can produce, achieve, and keep up with the fast pace of life. And while this can drive success for many, it also comes with an unfortunate side effect. As we get older, we're often seen as less useful because we're no longer able to contribute in the same way we once did. This shift in perception can be subtle, but it's deeply impactful. Many people, whether consciously or unconsciously, start distancing themselves from older individuals once they no longer seem like valuable resources in terms of productivity. Older people may no longer be working full-time, caring for children, or involved in the daily grind that society celebrates. Instead, they may be seen as slowing down or in the way, and as a result, others might not make the effort to engage with them as much. Take, for example, an elderly character named Margaret. She's in her late 70s and has spent her entire life raising children, volunteering in her community, and providing support to her friends and family. But now, as she gets older, she starts to notice that her calls are ignored more often, and invitations to social gatherings are fewer. At family dinners, people talk over her or dismiss her stories as though she's no longer contributing anything of value. Margaret starts to feel like an afterthought, a person whose experiences and insights aren't as important as they once were. The truth is, as people age, they may struggle with this shift. They've gone from being the go-to person for advice, help, or a listening ear to feeling like they no longer have a place in the social landscape. This can be a painful reality to face, especially when society's obsession with productivity and usefulness leaves little room for older generations to feel valued for who they are, rather than just what they can do. Section 2. The fear of facing their own mortality. As we grow older, one of the hardest things to come to terms with is the reality of our own mortality. But for many younger people, just witnessing aging can trigger deep, uncomfortable feelings about their own inevitable path toward getting older and eventually passing away. It's not easy for anyone to face the idea of death. And yet, as we age, we're constantly reminded of it through our changing bodies, our slower pace, and even the loss of friends and loved ones. This fear of mortality can cause younger generations to avoid or distance themselves from older individuals, not because of anything the elderly person has done, but because their very presence forces others to confront their own fragility. Consider a younger woman named Sarah, who once adored spending time with her grandmother, Grace. Grace, now in her 80s, has grown frailer over the years, and Sarah finds herself becoming increasingly uncomfortable during their visits. What was once a cherished time of shared stories and laughter now feels heavy, as Sarah watches Grace struggle with simple tasks or become more forgetful. In these moments, Sarah feels a nagging sense of fear creeping in, not just for Grace's health, but for her own future. She starts avoiding calls and visits, telling herself that she's too busy, but deep down she knows that part of it is the dread of seeing what's coming for all of us. This reaction is more common than we might think. Society tends to shy away from the realities of aging and death. We have a collective discomfort with the thought of growing old, and it manifests in the way we treat our elderly. Instead of embracing the wisdom, experiences, and stories they have to share, we often push them aside because consciously or unconsciously, their aging reminds us of the one thing we can't control: our own time on this earth. This avoidance isn't just limited to individuals either. In many social circles and even in media, aging and death are often treated as taboo topics, something we don't talk about until we absolutely have to. But in doing so, we miss the opportunity to connect with older generations, to learn from them, and to truly embrace the fullness of life, both its joys and its inevitable end. Section 3. You remind them of what they could have done differently. As we get older, we accumulate a lifetime of experiences, choices we made, paths we took, and things we regret not doing. For some people, witnessing an older individual can serve as a mirror, reflecting back to them what they haven't accomplished, the risks they didn't take, and the opportunities they let slip away. This can stir up feelings of guilt, jealousy, or even resentment. The older person, simply by existing, becomes a reminder of what others could have done differently in their own lives, and unfortunately, that projection can lead to a subtle but powerful judgment. Take, for example, Thomas, a man in his late 60s who still works part-time and tries to stay active, but has always felt he never fully reached his potential. His younger brother, Alex, is a successful businessman who has climbed the corporate ladder, but as he visits Thomas, he feels an uncomfortable sense of resentment bubbling up. Thomas never reached the same heights of success that Alex did, but he made different choices. He chose a simpler life, one that was filled with family, travel, and time spent pursuing personal passions. To Alex, however, this feels like a failure. He wonders if he's made the right choices, and his brother's contentment, even with fewer material accomplishments, is a painful reminder of the sacrifices he made in his own life. As a result, Alex often finds himself avoiding his brother, or when they do spend time together, there's a certain tension. He doesn't realize that his judgment is actually a reflection of his own internal struggle. Instead of celebrating Thomas's life choices, Alex resents the fact that Thomas didn't live the way he did, because it forces him to face the uncomfortable reality that he might have missed out on something deeper and more meaningful. This phenomenon is common, especially when we're faced with the wisdom and choices of others who live long lives. The older generation represents a tangible living example of a life well lived or a life of regrets. And for some, rather than embracing the lessons these individuals can offer, it's easier to distance themselves because it forces them to confront their own feelings of what could have been. This dynamic can make older individuals feel like they're being judged or resented, not for who they are, but for the life that others wish they had led. Section 4. They're jealous of your wisdom and experience. There's a strange paradox when it comes to aging. As we grow older, we accumulate wisdom, insights gained from years of living, learning from our mistakes, and facing the challenges life throws at us. In theory, this wisdom is something to be respected and sought after. However, in reality, many younger people often feel threatened by it. While they may envy the knowledge and perspective that older individuals possess, they're not always willing to show the respect that comes with it. This creates a tension where the very wisdom that should be revered becomes a source of discomfort and sometimes even resentment. It's easy to see why this happens. As people in their 20s, 30s, or 40s, we often feel like we have everything figured out. We're at the peak of our careers, raising families or forging our identities. When someone from an older generation offers advice or challenges our thinking, it can feel like a direct threat to the worldview we've spent years building. The idea that someone who has lived longer might see things differently or have a different approach to life can shake us to our core. And instead of appreciating this wisdom, we sometimes push it aside or ignore it altogether, because deep down, we're afraid of being wrong or having our comfortable beliefs questioned. Take, for example, George, an elderly man in his late 70s who has lived through many struggles and triumphs. He's seen the world change, and along the way he's learned invaluable lessons about patience, relationships, and the importance of staying grounded. One day, at a family dinner, George tries to offer some advice to his niece, Claire, who's struggling in her career. He suggests that she focus less on climbing the corporate ladder and more on finding balance and joy in her personal life. But instead of listening, Claire brushes him off. She tells him that he doesn't understand the pressures of modern work and dismisses his advice as outdated. Despite George's decades of experience, his words are ignored because they challenge Claire's current mindset. She believes that his approach is irrelevant in today's fast-paced world. George, however, is not bothered by this. He's lived long enough to know that wisdom doesn't always get the respect it deserves, especially when it challenges someone's ego or current beliefs. But for younger people, this can create a subtle tension, envying the older generation's insight, yet resenting it when it doesn't align with their own journey or worldview. This dynamic can be frustrating for older individuals, especially when their advice comes from a place of experience and a genuine desire to help. It's a reminder that, while wisdom should be celebrated, it's often met with resistance because it forces others to reconsider their own paths, something that can be uncomfortable and difficult to accept. Section 5. You're becoming invisible to society. As we age, one of the most painful realities many older individuals face is the feeling of becoming invisible to society. In a world that often values youth, beauty, and productivity, older people are frequently sidelined, overlooked, and forgotten. The culture of ageism leads to the systemic neglect of older generations, which can cause deep feelings of isolation, frustration, and resentment. It's as though, as time goes on, they no longer matter or are no longer relevant in the fast-moving world around them. This societal neglect manifests in subtle ways. In social settings, older individuals may find themselves ignored in conversations or treated as if they don't have anything valuable to contribute. Their stories are dismissed, and their opinions are often undervalued or unheard. It's not that people mean to be cruel, but society's fixation on youth and innovation leads to the quiet erasure of those who have lived longer, as though their experiences no longer matter. Consider the story of Eleanor, an 82-year-old woman who has lived through remarkable historical events and raised a family with love and wisdom. At family gatherings, Eleanor is often the one sitting quietly in the corner. As her children and grandchildren talk, she tries to join in with a story or piece of advice, but her words are quickly drowned out by louder voices. Her grandchildren, absorbed in their own lives, rarely take the time to ask her how she's feeling or listen to her memories. One evening, at a family dinner, Eleanor shared an important lesson she learned in her youth about perseverance through tough times, but her son, busy with his phone, didn't even acknowledge her. "Mom, that was a long time ago," he said, dismissing her quietly. In that moment, Eleanor felt a deep sting of invisibility. She had spent a lifetime building relationships, offering wisdom, and being there for her family. But now, she felt as though she no longer had a place in their world. Her voice no longer carried the weight it once did, and she realized how much society, and even her own family, had started to overlook her. It's a sad but common reality for many elderly individuals who find themselves not only physically aging, but also becoming forgotten in the social spaces where they once thrived. This invisible status can be a source of immense loneliness for older people. When no one takes the time to notice, listen, or value their experiences, it can lead to a sense of bitterness or resentment. They may start to feel like they don't matter, that they are nothing more than an afterthought, not just to strangers, but sometimes even to those they love. It's a stark reminder of how society needs to shift its perspective, embracing the elderly, valuing their wisdom, and recognizing that they have an integral role in our communities, no matter their age. Conclusion. As we've seen, aging comes with its own set of challenges, some of which aren't always visible but can deeply affect older individuals. The feelings of being disregarded, resented, or even feared can lead to isolation and resentment. But it's important to remember that behind each elderly person is a lifetime of experiences, wisdom, and value that deserves to be recognized and respected. If this video resonated with you, I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on how we can all do better in honoring and appreciating the older generations around us. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this insightful, don't forget to comment below with either a 9 or 0. Let me know where you stand. And as always, take care and see you in the next video.